The wind carried a quiet chill across the open prairie, the kind that whispered of lonely nights and long-buried pain. The campfire burned low, beneath a sky filled with dusty stars, crackling softly, as if it knew the story before anyone spoke it. She sat close to the flames with her arms wrapped around herself, not for warmth, but to keep her heart from falling apart. The journey had worn her down, her dress torn at the hem, her boots almost ruined, and the last trace of home fading behind her like dust in the night. She had never planned on ending up here. Alone on native land with no wagon train behind her. Her father promised he would return. He promised he would come back after scouting the ridge, after making sure the trail was safe. Hours turned into a day turned into the second night, and hope slipped away as shadows stretched across the plains. Some said he abandoned her. Others said he never survived the crossing. She did not know which truth hurt more. As she sat by the fire, trying to stay awake, horses approached from the darkness. Their silhouettes looked like spirits rising from the earth. The riders moved with discipline, silent and watchful, their eyes reflecting firelight. She flinched when she realized who they were. Apache warriors. Not the passing traders she prayed for. Not the settlers who might help. These men belonged to the land long before her people ever crossed it. One among them dismounted first, tall and strong, with long black hair tied behind him, shoulders broad, chest bare against the night air. Tribal markings rested across his skin, simple yet meaningful, and jewelry carved from bone and metal hung near his collarbone. He studied her without speaking, not with cruelty, but with the calm authority of a man used to leading, used to deciding the fate of others. She lowered her eyes, unsure if she should plead, run, or surrender. She had heard stories about their kind, stories told by fearful wagon men who saw every tribal nation as danger. But the truth before her did not look like the savagery she had been warned about. He looked like strength carved from the same land they walked on, weathered by battles and years beneath the sun. Yet holding a strange softness behind his stare, he stepped closer. His voice steady, his English rough but clear. He asked where her people were. She explained her father left to scout the ridge and never returned. She admitted she waited as long as she could. She admitted she was afraid. The other warriors murmured among themselves, some skeptical, some curious. One suggested leaving her where she was. Another said settlers brought trouble. A third reminded them they should not interfere. But the tall warrior did not move. His gaze stayed on her, as though he recognized something familiar in her loneliness. He motioned for her to stand. When she tried, her legs trembled and she nearly fell. Without hesitation, he steadied her by the arm. It was not a rough grip, just enough to keep her from collapsing. She felt his strength like a shield pressed between her and the world. They brought her back to their camp deeper in the valley. Women eyed her from a distance, unsure of what purpose she served. Children hid behind their mothers, whispering about the pale-skinned stranger who arrived in the night. Elders watched in silence, their expressions unreadable. The tribe had seen travelers before, but rarely one abandoned with no family, no wagon, no protection. She expected to be treated as a prisoner or an unwanted burden. Instead, she received food and water, though kept under constant watch. The warrior who found her stayed nearby, not guarding her, but silently offering safety in a place where she understood nothing. When she tried to sleep, the sounds of the camp unsettled her. Drums far off in the dark. Horses shifting in the grass. Fire sparks snapping like tiny warnings. The warrior sat across from her, arms resting on his knees, face lit by the orange glow. He did not look away even once. There was something in his eyes, old and tired, like a man who knew what abandonment felt like. Maybe he saw his own past in her trembling hands. She finally asked him why he bothered to save her when the others seemed unsure. He didn't answer at first. Then he spoke softly, almost like he was confessing to the wind. He said he had once been left behind too, forgotten by someone he trusted. He said no soul deserved that fate, not even a traveler from another world. Her heartbeat softened. For the first time since the trail, she felt seen. The days passed and she learned small things about their way of life. The tribe honored strength, loyalty, and survival. Everyday tasks carried meaning. Horses were treated like partners, not tools. Food was shared based on contribution, not wealth. Even disagreements carried dignity, settled by counsel instead of blind rage. She tried to help where she could, gathering wood, carrying water, cleaning hides. Some still doubted her, thinking she would bring danger or betrayal. But the warrior continued to stand near her, as though he had already chosen his side. As trust grew between them, so did something deeper, though neither dared to name it. He spoke fewer words than most men, yet his silence said more than speeches. When he looked at her, he didn't see a helpless settler girl. He saw a heart searching for a place to belong. And when she looked at him, she didn't see a wild warrior. She saw a man who carried pain quietly and protected others without asking for praise. One evening, after a long day, she sat beside the fire again. The moon rested low, silver against the grass. The warrior approached, standing over her with that same calm intensity as the night they met. He brushed a loose strand of hair from her face, not demanding, just gentle. Then he leaned close enough for only her to hear, his voice low like thunder buried under soil. "Your father left you behind, but you will not face the nights alone. In my bed you will find warmth and love. You will not be thrown aside again." Her breath caught. She did not know whether to pull back or lean in. The tribe watched from afar, waiting to see her choice. If she accepted, her life would change forever. If she refused, she would remain alone in a place with no road back. The fire crackled. The night grew darker. Her past faded like a distant dream, and her future stood before her in the shape of a warrior offering shelter. Not as a possession, but as a promise. Before she answered, distant drums echoed across the valley and riders appeared at the ridge. The guards shouted warnings. Horses stamped the ground. Torches flickered against the horizon. Something or someone was coming. And whatever waited out there might take away everything she had just begun to understand. She stood frozen, torn between danger outside and the warmth she was just beginning to trust within the warrior's arms. The drums grew louder as the riders neared the valley. The warrior stepped forward with a steady posture, his hand resting near the carved handle of his blade. The tribe arranged themselves in a wide circle, waiting for the intruders to show themselves under the moonlight. She stood close enough to feel the tension hanging in the air, her heart pounding in her chest. Whoever was coming did not ride with peace in mind. Torches finally lit the slope, revealing a group of men who looked neither like settlers nor the tribe. Their clothing was a mix of scavenged coats and rough hides, their horses thin and overworked. They moved like men who lived off trouble, not hard labor. When they reached the edge of the camp, they slowed, as if deciding how far they could push without starting a battle they could not win. The warrior raised his chin and spoke with authority, demanding to know their purpose. They claimed they were searching for a missing girl, a traveler left behind from a wagon train. They said her presence belonged to them, not to the tribe. The way they looked at her made her stomach twist, like she was a stolen prize instead of a human being. She did not recognize their faces. They were not with her wagon. Her father had traveled with honest settlers, not men with hollow eyes. The leader of the riders stared at her as though he knew secrets she had no voice to deny. Before she could speak, the warrior stepped between them. Blocking their view, the riders tried to convince the camp that she was trouble. They warned that keeping her meant inviting violence from people who wanted her back. But the warrior did not move an inch. He told them the land did not belong to them and that she was under protection. The riders exchanged looks, realizing this was not the night to fight. They turned and rode off into the dark, but not before their leader vowed they would return. When silence returned to the valley, the warrior lowered his shoulders, though tension still clung to him. She watched him, wondering why he stood for her with such certainty. He glanced toward her, then turned away, as if afraid to show what stirred behind his eyes. The tribe returned to their tasks, but their whispers carried new concern. They knew strangers did not leave without intent. Later, she sat near his fire again, her thoughts tangled. She asked why those men wanted her and why he protected her so fiercely. He answered slowly, saying that the world had many kinds of men, and some saw women alone as opportunity. He said he had seen such men before. They broke hearts and bodies and left no trace. She asked if he thought her father abandoned her the same way. The warrior hesitated, then said not every man who leaves means harm. But wounds still follow the ones left behind. She did not know if his words were meant to comfort her or himself. In the days that followed, she learned more about his past in fragments. He had not always been the warrior the tribe followed. He once lived under another leader who made choices that cost many lives. When a raid went wrong years ago, families were scattered and villages burned. The warrior survived but carried guilt that never left him. He rose in rank not because he wanted power, but because he refused to watch others suffer again. He protected because no one had protected him when he needed it most. She also discovered he had once loved someone deeply. A woman from his own people, strong and proud, who fought beside him. She was lost in a conflict with outsiders, taken by men who saw her as a trophy. He searched for weeks until the trail went cold. He never spoke her name again, and never sought another. Some believed he closed his heart forever. Others believed he waited for a reason to open it. She wondered if he saw that reason when he looked at her, or if he feared repeating a wound he had never healed, as she tried to adjust to life among the tribe. She struggled with feeling like she did not belong. The women worked with quiet skill, weaving, curing hides, preparing food. Their language was like wind over stone, so different from her own tongue. Children began to approach her, curious about her clothing, her hair, her pale hands. She tried to answer their questions with patience. Though she often felt like a lost piece from another world, the elders watched too, not with anger, but with the caution of those who have seen strangers bring ruin without meaning to. They met with the warrior often, discussing her presence. She could not hear their words, but she saw the worry in their faces. They reminded him that protecting her meant inviting attention from forces that had harmed them before. He listened without arguing, but he did not change course. One dusk, while gathering water by the river, she found a carved wooden pendant, half buried in mud. It bore the same symbols that lined the warrior's collar piece. When she held it up to the light, she noticed another marking scratched into the side. It looked like a family symbol, maybe a signature of a tribe or lineage. She wondered if it belonged to the woman he once loved, or if it had been his since childhood. Before she could hide it, young Scout caught sight of her holding it and ran off toward the village. When she returned, several elders gathered around the warrior, speaking sharply. They believed she sought to claim a place she had not earned. The warrior stepped forward and took the pendant from her hand, his voice low and frustrated. She thought he might accuse her, but he simply told the others it was nothing, that she stumbled upon it by chance. Even so, his eyes held a flicker of something heavy, something he wished she had never found. That night she could not sleep. She sat outside, listening to the crickets across the grass. The warrior approached quietly, sitting beside her. He asked if she meant to take something that was not hers. She said she found it by accident and did not understand its meaning. He stared at the pendant in his hand, then said it once belonged to someone important, someone lost. She asked if he ever hoped to see her again. He shook his head. Before she could say more, footsteps rustled in the brush nearby. One of the scouts approached with urgent news. Tracks had been found near the ridge, fresh and heavy. The same riders from before were circling back, and they brought more men. The tribe prepared to move deeper into the valley, away from open ground. Horses were saddled, supplies gathered, fires put out. She watched the warrior command his people with calm strength, but when she looked closely, she noticed a shadow behind his confidence. He knew they were not just hunting the tribe. They were hunting her. She tried to tell him she would leave on her own and draw the danger away, but he refused to hear it. He told her a person left behind once should never choose to leave themselves behind again. His words struck her like a truth she didn't know she needed, as the tribe mounted their horses to relocate. The night sky split with distant gunfire. The riders had found the valley faster than expected. Flames appeared on the ridge, torches swarming like hungry wolves. The tribe scattered into formation. The warrior pulled her onto his horse, his arm wrapped around her waist to keep her steady. They rode into the darkness, the earth rumbling under hooves. She clung to him, not just out of fear, but because some part of her felt she belonged at his side. Yet she also knew the riders would not stop until they got what they came for, and the tribe would pay the price. The warrior turned his head. His breath warmed near her ear as he whispered that he would protect her no matter how far they ran. But as the torches closed in, shadows swallowed the path ahead. She understood protection alone might not be enough to save either of them. The horse raced through the dark, its breath puffing in small white clouds as it carried them away from the valley. She felt the weight of the warrior's arm around her, the strength of his body as he guided the animal through narrow paths only he seemed to know. Behind them, shouts rose in the night. The riders had seen movement. Torches bobbed like angry stars against the hillside. Every sound of hooves on rock felt too loud, as if the earth itself might betray them. The warrior slowed near a narrow ravine, then swung off the horse and lifted her down. The rest of the tribe spread out, some heading toward the trees, others circling back in a loose formation meant to confuse anyone following their tracks. His voice was calm when he ordered the younger warriors to guide the women and children to a hidden canyon further west. He chose only a small group of seasoned men to stay with him. It was clear he planned to face the danger on harder ground. She wanted to protest, say he should go with the others, but his eyes warned her not to speak in front of his men. His people already carried the burden of her presence. He could not afford to show doubt. A woman from the tribe approached and took her arm, guiding her toward one of the smaller horses. She was older, with fine wrinkles near her eyes and braids streaked with gray. She had watched the stranger girl with guarded suspicion since the first night. Now her grip held a surprising gentleness. "You will ride with me," the woman said in accented English. "You do not know these paths. If you fall, he will blame himself and fight with less heart." Those words sank deep. Even in the middle of fear and noise, she understood the truth in them. She climbed onto the horse behind the woman and clung to her waist as they followed the others, along a faint trail that hugged the rocks. The tribe moved like a dark river flowing into the night, silent and determined. Behind them, she knew the warrior stayed behind to face the riders. The thought cut like a knife. She had known him for only a short time, yet he felt like the one solid thing left in her life. Her father had vanished. The settlers were gone. The riders who called themselves searchers felt like wolves. Only this Apache warrior had looked at her and seen something worth guarding. As they rode, the older woman finally spoke again. She said the warrior had always carried the tribe on his shoulders. She said he took every loss as his own. She asked if the girl meant to bring more sorrow to him. The question held no cruelty, only a tired wisdom. The girl answered honestly. She did not wish harm on him or his people. She admitted she felt like a burden, like a piece of broken wagon would wash to shore in a place where it did not belong. The woman listened in silence, then said there were many kinds of family in the world. Some were joined by blood, others by choice. She hinted that the warrior might be choosing her, though she did not say it directly. They reached the hidden canyon near dawn. The walls rose high around them, sheltering the camp from plain sight. Small streams cut through the rock. The ground held enough grass for the horses. Women began to unpack supplies, setting up temporary shelters. No one knew how long they would stay or if the riders would track them there. The girl could not rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw torches, heard gunshots that had not yet come, imagined the warrior alone on the ridge. She paced near the edge of the canyon until the older woman joined her again. The woman revealed that long ago, before the warrior rose as leader, he had faced another test with outsiders. A group of traders had come promising peace, then used that trust to lead soldiers to the village. The old chief died protecting them. The warrior survived, but carried the blame, even though he had been young. Since then, he watched every stranger carefully. For him to defend this lost girl now was no small thing. Hearing that, the girl felt both grateful and guilty. She wondered if she deserved such loyalty. She wondered what would happen if the riders captured her and bargained with her life. Would the tribe sacrifice their safety to save her? Would the warrior risk everything again? While the women worked, a slender boy from the tribe stayed near the canyon rim. He was the same scout who first reported the riders returning. He was eager to prove himself, and even more eager to please the warrior he admired. He did not like the idea of hiding while his leader faced danger. He whispered to the girl that he wanted to sneak back and help. She begged him not to. She knew how much the warrior needed that boy alive to guide the next generation. The hours crawled by without word. The sky shifted from dark to gray and then to pale blue. Every distant noise made hearts jump. A hawk circled high overhead. Somewhere far away, a rifle cracked, then went quiet. The children clung to their mothers, feeling the weight of danger in the air, even if they did not understand it at last. Near mid-morning, hoofbeats echoed along the rocks above the canyon. Everyone froze. Hands reached for weapons. The girl felt her knees weaken. For a moment, she pictured the riders appearing, tearing their hidden place apart. Instead, a small group of Apache riders emerged over the rise. The warrior was among them, dust on his skin and a hard look in his eyes. Relief washed through the camp. Women exhaled prayers. Children ran to greet fathers and older brothers. Yet the mood did not turn joyful. There were fewer riders returning than had left. The warrior dismounted slowly. A man behind him guided a horse carrying an injured warrior across its back. Blood stained the animal's side. Another rider had his arm wrapped tight with cloth, face pale. The battle had cost them. The girl hurried toward the warrior, but stopped when she saw the anger in his expression. Not anger at her exactly, but at the world that forced him to choose between lives. The elders moved in quickly, asking what happened. He explained that they had met the riders near a dry creek. Words were exchanged, but the intruders were not interested in peace. Shots were fired. 2 of the riders fell. One of his own men was killed. The intruders retreated for now. But they had seen signs of the hidden canyon and might return with more numbers. The elders argued among themselves. Some said they should move again, deeper into the mountains. Others said running would not end the hunt. The girl listened in silence until one elder turned to her and said that the trouble followed her. He did not say it harshly, but the meaning was sharp. The warrior cut in before she could speak. He said the trouble followed all of them, not just her. Settlers kept pushing across the land. Traders, soldiers, and drifters came with greed in their hearts. If it had not been her, it would have been someone else. The elder looked away, unconvinced, yet unwilling to challenge him further. Later, when the camp had settled into uneasy quiet, the girl approached the warrior near a pool of still water. He washed the blood from his hands, his reflection broken by ripples. She asked him if anyone died because of her. He paused, then said men died because some hearts were full of hate. He refused to place that burden on her shoulders. She was not satisfied. She wanted the truth, even if it cut. She asked if the tribe would be safer without her. He met her eyes at last. He said safety was not the only thing that mattered in a life. He spoke of honor, of choice, of standing for those who could not stand alone. He said that when he found her at the fire, shaking and abandoned, a part of him remembered his own younger self, the boy left behind in an old battle, the man who had watched his people fall. He admitted he did not know why he whispered that promise to her about his bed and his love, only that it rose from a place deeper than reason. It was not about possession. It was about giving someone a home when the world had taken everything else. Before she could answer, the young scout came running again, breathless. He had climbed to a higher ledge and seen dust clouds in the distance. More riders were gathering, and some carried something like a banner. On that cloth he saw a mark that looked like the symbol carved into her father's old wagon chest. Her heart dropped. If the scout was right, the men chasing them might not only be hunters, they might be connected to her own blood. Perhaps her father was alive. Perhaps he had joined forces with men like these. Or perhaps the banner had been taken from the wreckage of the wagon train. Any way she turned it, the mystery cut into her deeper than ever. The warrior looked between the girl and the scout, his jaw tight. He realized the conflict was no longer just between his tribe and nameless intruders. The past of this lost girl was tied to the danger riding toward them. The elders demanded answers she did not have. Had her father made deals with such men? Had he sold something of value? Had he promised her hand in marriage to pay off a debt? She could not say. She remembered only bits of hushed talk near the wagon fire. The way her father's eyes grew restless as they neared native lands. The way he sometimes looked over his shoulder, as if expecting someone to appear. Now it seemed that someone had finally caught up. The warrior announced that he would ride out to meet the approaching group again, but this time he would not confront them only as a warrior. He would demand to know what tie they had to the girl, whether they came to claim her by law, by trade, or by force. He promised the tribe that he would not give her away like a piece of property. Yet he also promised to seek truth, because lies and secrets could tear them apart as surely as bullets. The girl begged to go with him, convinced that only she could recognize any trace of her father or the truth of the banner. The elders protested. The older woman argued that sending her into the open was madness. The warrior stood silent for a long moment, weighing duty against the need for answers. In the end, he told her she would stay in the canyon, hidden among the rocks but close enough to see the meeting from a safe vantage point. It was the only compromise he could accept. As preparations began, the canyon buzzed with restless energy. Horses were readied again. Weapons checked. Prayers whispered. The young scout promised the girl he would stay near her hiding place, ready to warn her if anything turned worse than expected. She watched the warrior mount his horse once more, his figure framed against the bright sky. He looked back at her only once, and in that glance, she saw everything he could not say aloud. Fear, determination, and a growing bond that felt as dangerous as the riders. Approaching, the sun climbed higher, spreading harsh light across the plain. Dust rose in the distance, where the strangers gathered. The stage for the next meeting had been set, but no one knew if it would end in truth, betrayal, or blood. All she knew was that whatever happened out there would decide not only her future, but his, and perhaps the fate of everyone hiding in the sheltering stone around her. The wind carried dust across the flat, plain as the warrior and his riders approached the meeting point. The girl watched from the canyon ridge, hidden among the tall brush with a young scout beside her. She tried to stay calm, but her hands would not stop shaking. Somewhere in that gathering group of riders might be the truth she had been afraid to learn since the night she was left behind. A truth that could destroy the fragile belonging she had begun to feel. The riders below slowed when they saw the warrior. Their horses stamped the earth, restless. The leader from before stepped forward, his eyes cold with purpose. Beside him rode two unfamiliar men. One carried the marked banner the scout had seen. When wind lifted the cloth, her heart clenched. She knew that symbol. It was carved into the lid of the small box her father kept hidden in their wagon, the one he would never let her touch, the one he often checked nervously, as if expecting its secrets to vanish. The warrior demanded answers first. He asked who they were and why they pursued the girls so fiercely. The riders answered with half-truths. They said she was lost property from a settlement. They claimed she belonged to folks who wanted her returned. Their voices carried the tone of men who thought lies were easier when spoken loudly. The warrior refused their claim. He said she was under protection. He said she was not a prize or a possession. The riders laughed. One of them pointed toward the canyon and said everyone knew she was still there. They showed no fear of the tribe, as if someone more powerful stood behind them. The leader raised his hand, and the two new strangers brought forward a man tied to a horse. His head was low, his clothes torn, his boots missing. It took a moment before she recognized the figure. The worn face, the limp posture, the grief buried under dirt and exhaustion. She pressed a hand to her chest as her breath stumbled. Her father, her knees almost gave out. The scout grabbed her arm, whispering frantically that she had to stay unseen. Tears blurred her eyes and the canyon spun beneath her. She had dreamed of reunion, but never like this. She wanted to call out, to run to him, but the young scout shook his head. He insisted that if she revealed herself now, the riders would use her like a lever. Below, the warrior's expression changed. He stared at the older man, measuring him. The riders claimed he had survived an attack and that they saved him. They said he was willing to trade his daughter to settle unfinished deals. The father refused to lift his head, as if ashamed beyond words. The warrior asked aloud if these claims were true. Her father still did not speak. His silence felt like thunder spreading through her chest. The riders insisted they held the right to take her because a bargain had been made. They said the father owed them, and she was the payment. The warrior's jaw tightened as he raised his chin and refused. He said debt did not give men ownership over lives. He said she was not theirs to claim. His men behind him shifted and murmured, ready to defend the stance. Steel began to glimmer in hands. Horses pawed harder at the ground. A clash waited just one spark away. Her father tried to speak, only managing a hoarse whisper that reached no ears except perhaps the earth beneath him. She leaned forward, desperate to hear. The scout tugged her back. Her thoughts spiraled. If her father had indeed made deals with these men, then he might have trusted the wrong friends. His decisions may have placed her in danger before she even realized. Had he truly left her behind to save her, or because he saw no hope? Did he believe abandoning her at the fire would protect her from the men who demanded payment? Suddenly, one of the riders spotted movement near the canyon mouth. The older woman from the tribe had stepped too close while checking the paths. A rider shouted and pointed. Her heart stopped. Arrows and rifles lifted instantly. The warrior tried to intervene, ordering calm, but the moment had already tipped. Shots cracked in rapid bursts. Horses reared. Dust clouds exploded into the air. Warriors answered with arrows, sharp and fast. The world lit with chaos faster than a prayer could be spoken. The girl flinched and covered her head but still watched everything unfold. The warrior moved like wind, guiding his horse between enemy fire and his men. His voice rose with command as he pushed back the riders inch by inch. Her father jerked violently as his horse bolted, dragging him dangerously. One of the strange men held tight to the rope around him, as if the prisoner mattered more than the battle. The scout urged the girl to retreat deeper into the canyon, but she refused. She believed she had to witness every second. She believed the warrior looked stronger because he knew she was watching. More riders appeared in the distance, driving the tribe's other warriors toward the plain. The hidden canyon was no longer hidden. Children cried behind the rocks. Mothers shielded them with trembling arms. The elders tried to keep panic away from their faces. The warrior fought to keep the battle away from them. But the enemy numbers grew. The tribe stood their ground, yet fear rippled like a new storm forming at the edge of the sky. The girl thought of escaping on a horse, drawing the danger away from everyone. If she surrendered herself, maybe the riders would leave the tribe alone. She voiced the idea to the scout. His eyes widened in horror. He told her that if she went to them now, she would die with no promise that the tribe would survive in return. Still, the thought burned inside her. Her presence would destroy these people if she stayed. She owed them more than fear. The warrior locked eyes with her from the battlefield. Even from the distance, she felt the plea deep inside that stare. Stay alive. Stay hidden. Do not let me lose you. But then she saw her father collapse as the horse pulled him over sharp stones. The rope dragged him mercilessly across the ground. She cried out without thinking. The scout tried to silence her, but it was too late. Her voice echoed across the canyon. The leader of the riders turned, satisfaction twisting across his face. He pointed toward the ridge, shouting to seize her. Men pulled their horses around, ready to charge. The warrior noticed and spurred his own horse toward the canyon. Shouting orders behind him, she backed away, heart pounding. The scout grabbed a bow and positioned himself to defend her. She did not want anyone else hurt because of her. She begged the scout to go. He refused. The warrior reached the canyon mouth, dismounted, and ran the rest of the way. She met him halfway down the slope. He grabbed her shoulders, voice strained with frustration and fear. He asked why she did not stay hidden. She told him she could not watch her father suffer. She told him she could not let his people bleed for her sake. He shook his head. He said her life was worth more than the cruelty of anyone chasing her. He said her father's choices did not define her future. Before she could respond, a shot whizzed past them. The warrior shielded her with his body and pushed her behind cover. The scout yelled that riders were rushing the canyon. The warrior turned to his men, most of whom had fallen into defensive positions. Their arrows flew, but the enemy kept advancing. The tribe could not run anymore. They could not hide. The battle that would decide all fates was crashing into them without mercy. The girl pulled the warrior's arm, begging to speak to her father. She believed if she confronted him, if she revealed she was alive and safe, he might stop this madness. The warrior hesitated. He feared it was too late and too dangerous. Yet her eyes told him she would never forgive herself if she did nothing. He cupped her face in his hand just for a heartbeat. He said he would stand between her and every blade drawn against her. He said whatever truth waited in her father's heart, they would face it together. He mounted quickly and hoisted her onto the horse behind him. They burst from the canyon, dust billowing beneath hooves. The riders tried to intercept, but the warrior moved with furious precision. He guided the horse toward the hill where her father had fallen earlier. Bullet strikes kicked up dirt around them. The noise of battle roared like a raging fire. The girl leaned closer to the warrior, arms gripping tightly. She felt his heartbeat steady through his back. He felt unbreakable, like nothing could bring him to his knees, but danger surged from every shadow. Their enemy was determined to seize her, destroy the tribe, and crush the warrior's resolve. And somewhere within that chaos, her father's silence held the answer to everything as they neared the spot where he lay. One question outweighed all others in her mind. Would her father save her from the men he once trusted? Or had he come to deliver her into their hands? In that terrifying moment, the truth hovered one step away. Waiting to strike at any side it chose, the horse thundered across the clearing as the warrior pushed toward the fallen man. Dust rose behind them, fading into the chaos of gunfire and clashing steel. The girl held tightly to him, her heartbeat tangled with fear and a desperate hope that this moment would finally reveal the truth that haunted her. The wind whipped through her hair, the world narrowing into a single question. Was her father here to save her, or surrender her? When they reached him, her father lay half-conscious against a broken log, his wrists still bound by rope. His face was bruised, clothes torn from being dragged across stone. She jumped down before the horse even stopped, stumbling as her boots hit the uneven ground. She fell to her knees beside him, her hands shaking as she lifted his head. His eyes flickered open. At first, he stared as though seeing a ghost. When he finally recognized her, something fragile and broken flickered in his gaze. He whispered her name with a voice that had forgotten what hope sounded like. She wanted to cry, wanted to scream, but her throat felt locked shut. Before she could speak, the warrior cut the ropes around the man's wrists, then stood between them and the riders closing in from both sides. He held his spear point low, ready to rise. The second danger struck. The leader of the riders approached slowly, smiling like someone sure of victory. He shouted that the father owed them, and that the girl was the payment. He said the father traded her to save his own life. Her stomach twisted. She looked at her father, searching his face, begging silently for a denial. The older man shook his head weakly. He said he never traded her. He said those men took him prisoner and demanded he lead them to her. He said he tried to mislead them, tried to escape, tried to send them in the wrong direction. He said he left her on the trail not to abandon her, but to keep them from finding her. He believed staying with her would only bring worse danger. He believed she had a chance to survive if she disappeared into the land. His voice cracked as he confessed his fear. He thought he had already failed her once and could not bear to fail her again. Relief washed through her, but pain followed. He had chosen to protect her by leaving her behind, and in doing so had torn her heart apart. She whispered that she would rather face danger together than live safe and alone. He closed his eyes, tears building in the corners. He said he was just a father trying to save the only thing he had left in the world. The leader laughed and called his words lies. He ordered his men to seize both of them. Before they reached the group, the warrior stepped forward with a fierce yell, blocking their path. His tribe, hearing his cry, surged closer in defense, arrows drawn tight. The canyon echoed with the thunder of hooves returning not to flee, but to fight beside their leader. A final standoff. Formed beneath the rising sun, the leader of the riders tried one last bargain. He said if she willingly came with them, they would let the tribe go. The girl looked at the warrior and then at her father. She saw fear in the faces around her. She knew what those men did to people who could not fight back. She realized surrendering would not save anyone. It would only give those men power to return again with bolder cruelty. She stood tall, voice steady. She said she chose this tribe and the man who protected her. She said her life was hers, not a debt and not a bargain. She said the riders had no claim over land or lives. Her father, though weak, nodded in agreement. He said if they wanted blood, they would have to spill his first. The warrior lifted his spear and gave a final warning. Leave or fall. Silence thickened like fog. Birds lifted into the air. Every man on every horse waited for the smallest motion to decide fate. Then, without honor or warning, the leader pulled a pistol and fired toward the girl. The warrior moved faster, shoving her aside and taking the shot across his shoulder. The force knocked him back, but he stayed standing. His eyes burned with a fury so deep the riders recoiled. The tribe charged as one. The battle erupted in a storm of dust and fury. But this time the tribe fought knowing what they stood for. They fought not just to survive, but to protect their home, their children, their future. The enemy faltered. Their lines broke. Some fled into the grasslands in panic. The leader tried to escape, but the warrior rode him down and forced him to drop his weapon. The man surrendered, finally stripped of his false power. The battle ended. Not with overwhelming death, but with a line drawn in the sand that no outsider would dare cross again. When the dust settled, the tribe gathered around the wounded. Healing herbs were brought, water passed from hand to hand. The young scout was safe, shaken but proud. The older woman embraced the girl at last, not as an outsider, but as one of their own. The girl tended to her father and the warrior beside him. She washed blood from their skin, grateful they lived. Her father apologized again, saying he never wanted to lose her. She forgave him not because the pain vanished, because she saw the fear behind his choices. The warrior watched them with quiet patience. When the father finally rested, the warrior reached for her hand. She held it tightly, knowing now the strength she found in him was not born of power, but of wounds healed through protecting others. That evening, the tribe lit a new fire in the canyon. It's not a fire of warning, but of celebration. Children laughed again. Drums echoed across stone. Her father sat beside the elders, learning of their history. The warrior sat next to her, shoulder wrapped and face lit by soft flames. He leaned close. His voice a low whisper meant only for her. He told her she did not have to choose between blood and new belonging. He told her the land could hold many lives, many stories, many families. He said she could stay among his people, not because she was lost, because she was found. She rested her head against his arm, heart steady. She told him she had never belonged anywhere more. The night carried their quiet closeness like a promise. No fear, no chains. Only a future built on choice. Her father eventually rose and placed his hand on the warrior's shoulder, thanking him not just for saving her life, but for giving her a place where she could grow beyond survival. The warrior nodded, accepting the weight of that responsibility without pride. A star stretched across the sky. The warrior pulled her closer, his voice soft in the warm glow. He repeated the words he spoke the night they first met. But this time, they carried no loneliness, no longing, no emptiness. Your father left you behind once. Here you are, not forgotten. Here you find warmth every night. Here you are loved. She held him tightly, knowing the journey that began in abandonment now ended in belonging. The tribe danced long into the night. The wind carried their laughter across the open plains, and beneath that endless sky, she finally felt home.